Hi, this is Patsy with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper Live, a program for writers and those who dream of writing, and for everyone who wants to know the story behind the book. And I've got a great story today behind Nicholas George's first book. Oh my goodness, I always love a debut book. And here we are, and I'm so happy to welcome you to Joy on Paper. And we're going to talk about a book. I will tell you that it's a deadly walk in Devon, but I've probably walked most of the places in this book. Or if not, when I lived in England, I had a white Cadillac. So if I didn't walk him, I drove him. This is so exciting for me to be able to welcome you to the program to talk about someplace I love. I love England, and of course, I love Devon. So tell us about it. We're going to first, let's look at a few things. I get so excited. I love to be in on when a new series starts, because the first guest in the studio when I started my radio program over 9.5 years ago was Carol J. Perry. And I was so new to radio, I didn't know anything. And actually, the guys in the control room, I think, had a bet that I would not last a month because I didn't know anything. I didn't know authors. The first 3 interviews were interviews that I managed to get from people in New York City, which was a big coup for me, but they were on the phone. And then I had a local author who came in the studio, and I was so scared. I was terrified because I didn't know any real authors. And Carol J. Perry came into the studio, and she was a Kensington author like you. And it was her first book 9.5 years ago. She now has 3 series. She just got a new contract for 3 hardback books. She's accomplished so much, and I'm so proud that she was on my program for her debut book. And so you're here, and so you've got a long road ahead of you. And I know with the help of Kensington, you're going to get really far. And this cover, of course, is a Kensington cover, very distinctive.
Yes, it is. It's when I first saw it, I was a little taken aback by it because it wasn't like a traditional mystery cover like I was expecting. And then the more I lived with it, the more I liked it. And I was in England earlier this year and I was showing the book to someone on a train and they say, "Oh, that's just like a British travel poster." And I said, "You're right. That's what they were going for. That was the look they were going for. It hadn't occurred to me before."
And speaking of a British travel poster, let's set the scene because a lot of people don't know where Devon is. But for us who love England, there it is. It's at the very tippy tip of England. Well, not quite the tip, but there it is. Devon is a beautiful place. See all those places there? I'm sure that you've been to many of them.
I've been to probably not all of them, but Devon has 2 coastlines. It has the northern coastline, which is along the Bristol Channel, which is where my book takes place. And then it has the southern coast. And of course, there's a lot of typical England. There's so much history. There's so many historical sites that you can see and historical homes, of course. And you could just take any one county and you could just spend forever exploring it. So I've been to a few of these places. The Jurassic Coast, I've been along that, and Exeter Cathedral, I've been there. But up in the upper right-hand corner, Exmoor National Park, and that is close to where this book takes place. The walkers in the book, it's about a group walk. It's about 14 people on a group walk along the coast. And they're going along the Samuel Coleridge Trail, part of it, and the Southwest Coast path in England, and it's supposed to end up in Exmoor, where it concludes. And unfortunately, someone gets killed, as often happens in mysteries, and so they
Oh,
never make it.
no, we need a nice, and of course this is a cozy mystery, so it's not a very bloody. We have the trope that we have to stick with. We cannot have too much blood, but it's a great tradition going all the way back. Of course, Agatha Christie really led us off on this wonderful journey of books that just, especially British mysteries that drew us all in. All I think all of us book lovers, when once we started reading Agatha Christie, in a way our lives changed in so many ways. We thought differently. So
Yeah.
tell us So here you are, you retired from, I'm sure, a great job. I don't know what you were doing before, but you retired and you had in the back of your mind you wanted to be a writer, right?
That's right. I think I realized at an early age that writing was probably the one thing I was best at. And my career during my professional life was in communications, working for corporations and consulting firms and dealing with business. So I was writing, but I was writing to specific audiences such as customers, shareholders, employees, that kind of thing. And so
Very
I wasn't
exciting.
really.
Not exactly exciting writing.
No, it could be at times, but not usually. It's not as exciting as writing mysteries. And so that's what I always wanted to do. And you mentioned Agatha Christie, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I first read, and then there were none when I was maybe, what, 12. I thought, this is fantastic. How does she do it? And I think that set into me incentive to try to do that one of these days. So during my working years, I did try to do a little bit of writing, but it was hard to do when you have a full-time day job and everything. So when I retired, I said, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm not going to sit around the house and watch television. I want to write and write about something that I love. And at first I drafted a literary book that didn't really get to where I wanted it to go. But I love England, as you do, and I love walking. That's one of my favorite activities. So I go to England regularly and walk on their many paths and footpaths and trails. And I was over in Devon on a walk through the northern part of the county, and a lot of the other people on the walk with me were readers and liked reading mysteries. And when I mentioned I was a writer, one of the women on the walk said, Nick, you ought to write a murder mystery that takes place on one of these walks. And I think she was kidding. I think she was joking. Everybody laughed, but I thought about it. And when I got back home, I thought, I'm going to give it a try. So I sat down. I used the walk I had just been on as the basis for the book, and I used some of the people in it, modifying them a bit, and I just hammered out a first draft in 5 weeks. And I thought, this is a lot of fun. I really enjoy this. What, if anything's going to happen with it, I don't know. But I knew I needed to fine tune it. I worked with my writing group to get feedback and get it in shape. And throughout that process, I wrote, I ended up writing two more in the series after that. And then the time came I got to see if I can get this thing published. And it's a challenge. But I thought I had something here. I thought it had a chance. I thought it was rather unique. I hadn't read a mystery that had this particular setting or this particular structure before. So I was able to interest an agent to represent me, and then she was able to get me the book deal at Kensington, which I'm obviously very fortunate.
They take care of their authors. Kensington is
They
great. If you can get with
they
Kensington,
really do. Yeah,
they're
they really do. They're a great team, and I do feel taken care of. You're right.
yeah, and being clever, as you mentioned, the cover, because the cover is evocative. And for any of us who have been to England, and we've seen some of these old posters, they're still around. And it does for all of us right away. We know we know what we're in for. And it's wonderful. Now, what this woman who gave you this suggestion, are you in contact with her?
Sadly, no. She was the wife of the founder of the company that put together those walking tours. And when I got the good news that the book had been sold, I wanted to tell her. And unfortunately that was during COVID, and the company they didn't fold up. They're back in a way right now, but they were on hiatus and they really weren't active. And I tried to contact her, and I don't believe I was ever able to reach her. However, I did reach a couple of the people who are characters in the book, who were on
Ah,
the walk, and I based characters on them, and they were thrilled about it. They thought,
well,
"Oh,
well,
this is
you
great."
you you should find this woman and send her a hamper from Fortnum and Mason. She deserves that because she set you in the right direction to the place where you belonged. I think it was meant to be because you just capture Devon, and I love it. As I said, I did spend a lot. I owned a store in Wales, And so when we went out to Wales, and please, people, Wales is different. Is different from England. But when we went to Wales, and often we'd head again south and we'd go down to Devon and down to the coast because we enjoyed it so much. When you have a muse, and she certainly did a great job for you.
She did. I'll have to try again to try to reach her. She's still around somewhere, I'm sure.
Maybe now with these YouTube interviews because they go all over the world. I always love to look at the blurbs that people get. And now, of course, this is a debut book. And a debut book is something special. It's something, it's there. It means you've made it. And you had such wonderful comments from the Washington Post. I love that. They did a great one. And then on the book list, I love that they said a variation of the closed house mystery with distinct character personalities. I particularly liked Lee Hollis. First of all, she's a great author. I really like her. You'll want to walk just about anywhere with retired police detective Rick Chasen, a modern day Hercule Poirot. There we are talking about Agatha Christie again. And of course, I love the one from Frank Anthony Polito because he's been haunted to death. So he's great. And of course, he admires your book so much. I got a kick out of him. What did it feel like when you got these wonderful blurbs from people?
When the book came out, of course you're nervous. You thought, are people going to like this? I know that it sold to the publisher and everything, but I was so nervous about getting my first reviews. And I had people tell me, Nick, don't pay any attention to the reviews. Just continue writing. And so I was obviously very happy to get these notices, and which were not that I think I knew my work was good, but I wanted other people to appreciate it as well. So it was very encouraging to hear some of the things that people were saying about it. So yeah, that was very nice.
Yeah, I think everybody would be nervous at the beginning when you aren't sure if it's going to be accepted, if you aren't sure that, but you honed your craft somewhere along the line so that when your debut book came out, it just hit it at the right time, I think, with people. How did you hone your craft?
I think two ways. One thing I encourage all writers to do, of course, is read good writers, read writers you admire. And when I say read, I mean study them. Look, how do they do it? How do they structure their stories? How do they structure their sentences and paragraphs? And how do they create their characters? And all of that. And there are so many great mystery writers, and I've been reading mysteries my whole life. And so when I think of some of the mystery authors that I admire, such as Agatha Christie or Ross MacDonald was another one I really like, Michael Connelly I think is great. And I mean, there's so many of them. As you read, some of that does permeate. Some of that does, okay, when you sit down to actually write, some of that does influence how you do it. But in addition to that, you just have to keep doing it. You have to just keep writing. I try to write every day, and you need feedback. You need to have your work read by others who can take an objective look at it that you can't. And so just doing all of that. When I first retired and was really diving into this full time, I'd written before, as I mentioned, but not to the extent that I had been doing. So doing all of that, I could really see my progress over the short period of time that I was getting better at what I was doing. And it's a never ending process. You never probably get as good as you want to be, but if you can see that you're actually improving, that can be very encouraging as well.
Tell us about Chase because it's always your main character. He's got a heavy load to carry because he's got to carry through this book. And how did you develop him? You didn't have any police background, so you made him a police officer. Where did that inspiration come from? Because he could have been just a tourist on a walk. So how did this come?
Of course, you think, who's going to be your main character? And it was a challenge because I wanted to be somewhat like myself. He's about my age. He's probably a little younger than I am. And he's from Southern California, such as myself. Now, I don't have a police background, but I wanted a character who the reader would believe that he has the skills to analyze a crime and see how it was committed and maybe who committed it. And if he was just an ordinary tourist, Yeah, you could probably make that work too, but that's why I gave him the police background, because it instantly establishes some credibility for the character. And then one of the big challenges of writing a book like this is that these people are on holiday, they're on vacation in England. Most of the characters on the walk are American, and they don't know one another. Supposedly, they come from different parts of the country and have never met one another before, which is different than a lot of mysteries which have a set group that has a common history together, and they've either lived together, part of the same family or part of the same community. This is not the case with these people, so that was a challenge. And then to have Chase come in and insinuate himself with the police, you have to, would this really happen? It does happen in mysteries where you have the amateur detective pairing up with the local authorities to find out who the killer is. There's a certain suspension of disbelief there. But I did not want Chase as a character to be me. I didn't want to be in the book. So I gave him some qualities and traits that are different from mine. He's a sports fan. He loves the Boston Red Sox. I have no interest in sports or baseball. So I had to do some research on that one. And so he's a little different in some ways like that, and maybe a little bit quirkier in other ways. And so I hope I've established him as people who know me don't say, "Oh, you're just like Chase." And so I feel I have succeeded in that.
Yeah, yeah. You can have a Miss Marple who's really an amateur detective, but here we have a detective and always when a detective is in a different location from his home location where he is the authority. When you're in England, it's different. It's everything. It just plays out differently. You had fun, obviously, plotting this because it's good. It's very good. I'm a cozy mystery fanatic. So I love little plot twists. I love Easter eggs. I love all of that. Um, my favorite, really, although I love Agatha Christie, is Dorothy Sayers. I read Dorothy Sayers all the time. Twice a year, I'm reading a Dorothy Sayers because they're at a different level. They're really intelligent, very intelligent. You also bring some of that intelligence into your writing too, I think.
Thank you very much. I do. I think I have a brief nod toward Dorothy Sayers in this book, and someone compares another character to Lord Peter Wimsey, and but so I tried to do a little bit of that. But you're right. What this really all about is fun. I have fun writing these books, and if it weren't fun, I wouldn't be doing it. And even if I weren't published, I'd still be writing because this is something it's play to me. It's like I can create these little stories and worlds and use some of what I know and try to do a spin on them and make them a little bit different and just have fun with them. So I think you really nailed it in that regard.
And at the same time, bring people to something new, a new place. Most people haven't been to Devon, but Devon's a wonderful place. Did you do, for me in those days, and particularly with a white Cadillac, if you want excitement, drive a white Cadillac down a street in Rome where you have maybe 2 inches on each side of, of the car. The streets are so narrow. And I did that. And actually, people had to jump into their doorways because, but that also in Devon, basically, it's also a pub. It's pub hopping. They have a lot of pubs, and when you get to a little village, every village has 3 pubs. I think, right? Did you love
Yeah.
that?
Oh, I love going to pubs because not only can you drink good beer, you do see the members of the community there, and it is really the public house. It's where people go to relax and talk and catch up with one another. So it's a great way to get the flavor of the local community when you go to the pub. And I love that. We don't really have anything similar to that,
No,
in
no.
my opinion, here in this country. But you're right about driving a Cadillac in England. The roads in Devon are pretty narrow too, so that's hard to do. But I don't like to drive. I've gone over there and rented cars and driven around, but you're driving on the wrong side of the road, and you usually make mistakes. So I try not to do that anymore.
It's funny when you're driving a Cadillac and you're on the left, and of course the other cars are on the right. It was absolutely so much fun. I would be driving down the M4 in my Cadillac, and next to me would be trucks, and the driver is right next to me. And it was funny in those days. I was young and I would be wearing mini skirts and they would be looking down at me and smiling and waving to me. Because where do they see a blonde girl driving a white Cadillac on the M4? So it was lots of fun. So,
I would have loved to have seen a picture of you in your Cadillac. And
oh,
I have
yeah.
that image in my mind now. I've got to work that into one of my books.
That's it. When you are in England and when you are in these villages, and most of them have like at least two pubs. And in my village, we had three. So we had one was really for the hoity-toity. They were the ones who all worked in London, and they'd come in on the train, go in and on the train, and they were one set. And then we'd have one where mostly working people would go, and then we'd have another one where sort of the intelligentsia of the village would go. So it was you could decide what you wanted every day. What did you find about the food and the drinks in England?
A lot of people put down British food as being bland or not as exciting as some other types of cuisine. I like British food, I really do. And I like mushy peas. A lot of people don't like that. I love that. I love some of the signature dishes like toad in the hole and beef Wellington and Yorkshire pudding.
Fish and chips.
Oh, I love fish and chips, fish and chips. And every time I go to England, that's the first meal I have. So I know I'm in England. Most pubs do fish and chips pretty well. Some don't. But that's the first meal I ever have when I arrive in England. And I love the beer. I love the various kinds of beer and the spirits. In this book, Chase has a discussion about gin, and there are so many different kinds of gin that are produced in England with different kinds of botanicals, and that can be a subject all on its own. There's really so much when you dig deep, and you can learn about the food and drink and customs of people there. It's fascinating to me.
I love the discussion of gin because in my day, the pubs were closed in the afternoon and you had to wait until 5 o'clock. And people would start coming down around 4:30. They'd start sitting outside. There were always benches and we'd sit outside. You'd get to know people. And that first gin and tonic was the best. It was the anticipation. People enjoyed that gin and tonic much more than the fact that they can now have it whenever they want.
That's right. And what I do is I have a daily ritual where at 5 o'clock I have a gin and tonic, and I don't try to do it before 5 o'clock, and I look forward to it. So I think I replicate that experience here back at home.
I'm the same way. 5 o'clock, that's when you get it. And I think for people who don't understand this, now I don't know if you started going there when the pubs were still closed. And actually it was lots of fun because we'd sit out there and we'd think about, what is the pub owner doing upstairs with the barmaid? It sort of gave the sense of anticipation. That's why they closed the pubs, so that the owners could have a few hours of relaxation. We always felt they're having a good time.
I hope they are, like a siesta.
Yeah, the research that you did into gin, where did all these ideas come from?
By the time I wrote the book, like I said, I've been going to England annually for some time now and on other walks. So I had a lot of those experiences to draw from, being in pubs and what do they drink and what are the people like, and as well as what is it like to walk in England, because it's a bit different than it is in this country. There are trails and paths everywhere. They crisscross the country. They're usually very well maintained and they're usually very well marked. So you can still get lost on them, but the signage usually is pretty good. And you go through people's yards. The right-of-way is different than here in the United States, where you might be walking along and somebody is mowing their lawn right next to you or having tea on their lawn and something like that. It's just fascinating. So I drew from a lot of my experiences having been there, as well as my lifetime of reading mystery novels, and what are the conventions of mystery novels and how can I maybe subvert those conventions a little bit.
So where did you stay most when you were there? Did you deliberately stay in some of the inns along the way as opposed to big hotels?
You stay at what's available, but when I go on these group walks, the company or organization that put the walks together usually determine where you're going to be staying. So they'll book you into the inn or hotel that is nearest to where you'll be walking. For the Devon walk, Oh God, I'm going to be a little embarrassed here. I based the hotel that the walkers are staying at when the book begins is an actual hotel. I based that on the one I stayed. It's just outside of Barnstable, and I've changed the name of it, but so I'm trying to remember the real name. I can't remember the real name of the place, but it was very beautiful inn, and they were known for their gardens. They were known for a woman who had owned the place for many years was renowned for being a great gardener. So you do stay in some of these fascinating places. And sometimes there's not much available, but just a dingy little hotel. And okay, for 1 or 2 nights, you can put up with that. Most of the places, though, are pretty good. And I try to, if I can, I try to stay at a place with a little bit of character and a little bit of history.
I did too. I always would stay. I enjoyed occasional dingy hotels. It gave you the flavor of
Yeah.
the country, um, and the people, just the characters that you can come across on a walk. Quite amazing. My gardener was Welsh, and I lived in just near Reading, so it's outside of London. But he's Welsh and a little guy, tiny little guy, and he'd tell me whenever I went over to Wales, he'd say, "Oh, you have to go here, you have to go here," and he was right. He'd send me on these little walking trips, and I would meet these people. Of course, I didn't understand half the people. When you're in Wales, you don't understand all the people. But so, how did you find some? Now, Devon accent. It's not. It's easy to understand. There are some areas of England that when you start talking to the locals, woo.
Yeah, you're right. Devon wasn't too challenging in that respect. If you've ever been up to Yorkshire, they have their own way of talking. Their accents can be very challenging, and uh, I was on a walk up there, and we were taken to the home of a man who was a part-time musician, but he was putting on a demonstration for us about how they build these brick walls around their property, not using any cement or mortar or anything, but just stacking the bricks. And so he was describing his how he was doing it as he worked, and we couldn't understand any of what he was talking about, very little of it. The Geordie dialect that they have up there, and different parts of England have their different parts of
Oh yeah.
dialect. Certainly Wales does, and that kind of thing. But usually you can understand the people.
Well, now that brings us to now this one, A Deadly Walk in Devon, of course, is really great. And I think you've done a great job with that one. And there it is. But I understand that you have finished the second book in the series, which is so exciting. And there it is, A Lethal Walk in Lakeland. Now, in Lakeland, oh, I'm going to go crazy for this book because I just can't wait. So tell us about this book, which is coming up, and I think the release date is when? When's it released on this one?
At the end of January, it'll be
End of
coming
so
out.
you're
Yeah.
going to be back here very soon. You've
Yes. Yes,
yes.
actually. Yeah, I'll be back maybe on your show pretty soon.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely, you're going to be back. But tell us about this one a little bit. A preview.
It was, yeah, Lakeland is another term for the Lake District of England, up in the northern part. Beautiful part of the beautiful territory, beautiful part of the country, with a lot of lakes. And then you really can't call them mountains, but there are hills around the lakes and everything. This, unlike the first book, this is not based entirely on a walk that I took there. I have been up in that part of the country, and I have walked in trails in that area. But in this particular book, the walkers are going on what is called the Coast to Coast Trail, which spans from each coast, from the west coast to the east coast. And if you wanted to walk the entire thing, it takes a while. It may take 2 weeks or more because it's about 140 some odd miles. But in this book, the walkers are on an abbreviated tour where they're just going to different parts of the walk. But I wanted to show a little bit of what the territory is like, what the countryside is like, and what the towns are like. I'd been to some of that, and I was able to incorporate some of that. I did base some of the walkers on people I'd met on another walk up in Northumberland. I took a walk up there one time, which is on the northeast coast of England. And there was a family with us on the walk from Texas. And I think there were 5 of them. And they were very colorful people, very nice people. I really liked them. And so I wanted to work them into this book. I used them as the basis for a family in this book. Now, the actual family that I worked with, their last name was Downey. That was the family name, Downey. So I thought, I don't want to use that. So I thought Downey, down, what's the opposite? Up. So I called these people the Upton family. So the Uptons are in this book. And it's a challenge to frame a country walk in a murder mystery. So I had the same challenges with this one as I did with the first book, but it was fun to do. It was fun to take that challenge on, and I hope when people read this, they'll get a sense of the Lake District and what it's like, and again, a sense of the British, just sense of being in Britain with the pubs and the people and all of that.
For me, particularly, this is so much fun. I'm going to look forward to every book. And as I said, Carol J. Perry started 9.5 years ago and now written, she's got 3 series, 15 books in her Witch City Mystery series. And she's going strong. She's got 2 other series. And again, she started doing all of this after she retired. So people, there's so much you can do. Even if you don't actually write a book, you can live through a book by being inspired. Now, get up and get out and go to Devon and look for some of these places that Nick has discovered. And that's part of the fun too, because life, just get out there and find the joy. That's what people have to do.
Yep. You've got it. Exactly right. There's so much to see in the world, and both around where you live and other places, and just what calls to you. What do you think? Okay, here, I've got to go there and I've got to see that, and just try to respond to that if you can. It sounds like you're good luck for authors, Pat, so I hope that luck rubs off on me as well.
I will keep promoting this, and it's just a fun read, and everybody get out there and do one of these walking tours, because those are fun, and you never know, you might land up being a character. Nick might be in your walking group, and next thing you know,
possible.
That's it. You're going to land up being a character in one of these. It's a cozy mystery. Somebody has to die. I'm sorry. I'm just warning you. But it's fun. So for another lover of Dorothy Sayers, thank you so much for joining me today. It's just so much fun to talk to you, Nick. And
thank you. It's been a pleasure for me
too. Your website.
That's it. NicholasGeorgeAuthor.com.
And people can find out more about you there, and just get this book and have lots of fun and go on a cozy tour and tell them why they should go to Devon.
You'll see countryside like no other place on earth. Love it.
You'll love it. Exactly. We're going to promote Devon too. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye. Any book that takes me to England is a book that I love. So I hope that you will get A Deadly Walk in Devon. Please subscribe to Joy on Paper Live, because I need subscribers, and you know how to do it. And of course, share. And most importantly, give a comment and just push that subscribe button and subscribe to Joy on Paper Live, because I want to bring you more interviews with fascinating authors who might inspire you. So get out there, find the joy, and live the joy. And please, just subscribe.
Turn the house down.